Pests beware, your fields have heroes. The Pests and Predators podcast is brought to you by Field Heroes and is powered by the Western Grains Research Foundation. Learn how beneficial insects fight pests and protect your crops. Visit fieldheroes.ca today.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Hello and welcome to this Tuesday, May 6th edition of RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host for the day, Lyndsey Smith. Yes, Tuesdays with Lyndsey are back for a one-day run. So Sean Haney is very busy. I know he informed everybody yesterday of his travels this week. I am getting all sorts of just amazing photos of Washington, D.C. I have to tell you, America, Washington, D.C. is a very pretty city as far as all the monuments and the super cool pictures. Sean's very busy there with NAFB, having a wonderful time and getting all sorts of really cool interviews and interactions and meetings. We'll have some of the coverage of this event on tomorrow's show, and then of course in the following days. So head on over to RealAgriculture.com, follow us on Spotify, etc., wherever you get your podcasts, and you'll hear lots of that, but some of it here on the show as well. So don't you worry about that. I did also, of course, want to send a shout out to my team that joined me on the agronomist last night, Christine O'Reilly and Grant Lestuka, both forage and grazing specialists. Grant's in Alberta, Christine's here in Ontario. We had so much fun on the agronomist last night, talking about pasture and hayfield rejuvenation, how to do it, when to do it, why to do it, what works, what doesn't, and just such a fun evening. It helps that I absolutely adore forages and of course love livestock and have them. But it's just a fascinating conversation because of course, so often in agronomy, we talk about annual crops, and it's really cool to think about perennial crops and how we manage them differently than an annual crop. So check that out. If you're on our YouTube channel, it's under our live tab. You can or just search the agronomists and you can find all our past episodes as well, or head on over to realagriculture.com/agronomists and you'll find last night's show and of course all the shows as well. And if you're a CCA or collects CU credits, it qualifies for that too. So check it out. Okay. But on today's show, you're not going to hear any of that. Instead, we are going to hear all about squealing on pigs, on the wild pig problem here in Canada. So Dr. Wayne Lees will join me for that. I've got Justin Funk with Real Agri Studies is going to give us a sneak peek into the April intake of the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index. So we've got that. Sean Haney will join us briefly for a product spotlight with Cornie Thiessen of ADAMA Canada. And then I've also got my discussion with Ted Bilyea. He's with CAPI. We are going to talk about a recent report about, is Canada, we always talk about agriculture and agriculture products and food, et cetera, as, strictly an economic driver. But Ted's got some really interesting insight into using food and our production of food and our export of food as a diplomatic and, a lever really to get all sorts of things done, specifically in the Indo-Pacific region. So we are going to talk about that at the end of today's show. As always, if you've got feedback, give us a call, 1-855-776-6147, or you can send me an email, lsmith@realagriculture.com. All right. Let's get to it. We're going to take a quick break and I'll be back with Justin Funk right after this.
Time for a product spotlight with Nutrient Ag Solutions. Joined right now by Rob Clayton, the Senior Vice President of North American Retail. Margins are tight in the cropping sector. It's one of those years where let's get to the other side of it. Live to fight another day, so to speak. You've also got some financial support services or products that you offer your customers as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is really about being one partner and all in, as we say. We like to think of ourselves as the organisation that you come to for all of your farming needs, including the in-crop financing. And Nutrient's invested invested about $3.5 billion into a financing program for our growers so that they can get the products when they agronomically need them, not when their cash flow allows. It's a really important part of farming in North America, and particularly while we've got compressed crop prices.
If somebody wants more information, obviously in a lot of the local communities there is a Nutrien store, but are there other ways to reach out?
NutrientAgSolutions.com is a good way. There's lots of different ways you can contact our people, but really the best way, go into your local store, meet the local people and see what they got to offer.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch Wheat Pete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and don't put your yield at risk, put your trust in proven solutions. Anvol Nitrogen Stabilizer, Super U Premium Fertilizer, and Tribune Nitrogen Stabilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. These products offer higher active ingredient concentrations imitator brands can't match. See the difference at defendyourn.ca. Joining me now is Justin Funk co-founder of Real Agri Studies, also of Agri Studies. And Justin, we're going to talk about the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index and the latest findings of the survey, which is a super cool thing. But I wanted to back up just a moment. For those in our audience who maybe aren't as aware of the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index or what Real Agri Studies does, what is this index? Why are we doing it?
Well, thanks, Lyndsey, for having me on. This is a project that was inspired by Purdue University and the Ag Economy Barometer, a project that has been running since 2016, designed to measure farmers' sentiment and feelings towards a number of issues. You know, for years, we have been relying on U.S. data and trying to apply that to the Canadian marketplace. But Sean and I saw an opportunity to do this in Canada. So in September of 2022, we launched our very first CFSI, Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index. And the objective here is to try to allow the industry sort of behind the curtain look at how the farmer is thinking and feeling about issues related to their farm's financial situation, confidence in marketing their crops or their livestock, their thinking towards the economy or the ag industry in general, and also their state of mental health. We make a lot of assumptions, I think, about farmers. Sean has often used the term the farmer's opinion is hijacked, because you hear the anecdotal stories from the coffee shop. But this is an opportunity for us to present a unified voice of farmers in Canada and also quantify some of these things as well. So to put some numbers behind it and then track the progress over time and to see how sentiment changes with respect to changes in the market environment.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the really cool things, and I'll put this out to our whole audience, if you're interested in being a part of this CFSI, there's always an opportunity to join the Insights panel. So you sign up, you answer a few questions, and then the surveys are sent to you, and you can choose to answer them or not answer them. But we really appreciate it when you do, because as you said, Justin, I think this is so important. This is a sentiment index, meaning that you really are being asked how you feel or what you think about certain aspects of your own farm business, but also the industry at large and where it's headed. And so there are no wrong answers, which I love. It's really just trying to capture how farmers are thinking or feeling about certain aspects a couple times a year. And then what's really cool, everybody, is we can go back and we can compare. So we can look at this time last year, the year before, and even do that, as you mentioned, Justin, that comparison to the U.S. farmer as well. So we do that. And I want to, before we get into, we are going to give sort of high level looks today at our latest intake for the CFSI. But I want to just encourage everybody, head to realagristudies.com and you can actually sign up there and see past coverage. Or Sean Haney and Justin Funk have broken down the latest findings on a YouTube video. So head on over to our YouTube channel and you can get into the real details there. So, but on that, there are, of course, certain questions in the CFSI we ask every single time. Then sometimes there's some that come and go. One of the ones that, everyone is always very interested in is farm financial performance. And walk us through, because we ask current, but we also ask how farmers feel going forward. So what did that look like in this latest intake?
Yes. So, we do this every quarter. And so the latest one was in April. And I should preface this by saying that all this information was collected prior to the latest Canadian federal election. So just if anybody's wondering about that. So first of all, when we do this, we present the respondent with a question and then a positive response, a negative response, and sometimes a neutral response. So when we ask the question, and I'm actually going to read the question, would you say that your operation today is financially better off, worse off, or about the same compared to a year ago? And so there's the three options: better off, worse off, or about the same. We subtract the negative response from the positive to get a differential. We add 100 to it, and that creates the index. And so if 100 is neutral, anything above 100 is a positive sentiment. Anything below 100 is a negative sentiment. So in April, just a few weeks ago, when we asked this question, we saw the result come in at a 64. So that is significantly lower than what we saw in January, which was an 83. So right now, farmers are feeling rather negative about their farm's current financial performance relative to a year ago. Right. Now, the relative part is important. So we also asked this question: how would you assess your financial performance today? Is it excellent, good, fair, or poor? And I should note, 60% of farmers said that their current financial situation was either good or excellent. So what they're saying, though, is that it is worse than it was 12 months ago. Now, projecting out, looking 12 months from now, we asked the same question, just asking people to look into the future. That number came in at 74. So yet negative. It's been on a downward trend. So going from a year ago in April of 24, it was an 87, still negative, but now it's dropped, nearly 13 points in that time frame, and it's been a steady decline. So farmers are rather concerned, I guess, about the future. I should note, Lyndsey, though, that in all of our sentiment indexes where we've asked people to project into the future, we have never seen a positive response. And I think that does tell us something about how the farmer thinks about things. You just don't want to get overly optimistic about things.
Mm-hmm. And I want to point out for anyone who is curious or maybe hasn't been a part of this, there are positives that we find in the sentiment index, depending on which question we ask. But this is a reflection of, as you said, a point in time. So this was April, a lot of things going on. And this is specific to the farm financial performance. And I really do appreciate that we ask the where you're at financially, because of course you can be in an excellent position, but doing worse than the year before. So just because you feel that the farm is in a worse financial position, it doesn't mean you're in dire straits. While that could be for some, that's why we asked that qualifier, which I think is really important.
And Lyndsey, that was actually a suggestion from one of our panelists.
Yes.
We have an open-ended comment, and they say, you should, I'm saying I'm worse off than I was a year ago, but I'm still in a pretty good place.
Yes.
So we decided to ask that as a benchmark question.
Mm-hmm. Which we'll be able to go forward and sort of compare, which is fantastic. Okay, now that is, of course, about the farm itself. Many things are going to impact that. But then we also ask about bigger picture. We ask macro sort of ag economy, how farmers are feeling about the economy overall.
Right. So we look at optimism towards the ag economy in the 12-month time frame ahead of us. And then we look at general feelings towards the ag industry over a 5-year time frame. So both a short and a long-term outlook. With the short-term outlook, the Canadian ag economy, the number came in at 40, which is 60 points below the neutral line. So very, very negative outlook on the 12-month ag economy. And of course, there are so many issues right now that are pressing, that are influencing, I think, how people think about that. That number has never been super high. But just for context, in October of 24, it was 62. So we are up, though, 4 points from January. I guess that's a bit of a positive, but still, it's one of the more negative numbers that we see. Looking out in the 5-year horizon, though, again, a negative number at 64, and it's been on a steady decline. I think a lot of the issues and the uncertainty that we see going forward is impacting how people are answering that question.
Well, so there's so many things that play into this. Global tensions, obviously, the Canada-U.S. relationship. As you mentioned, this was before the election, but there's a seasonality to when we ask this, right? And as you mentioned, we ask quarterly. But we on the team, when we look at some of these numbers, we've made assumptions about time of year for some of these things, and they don't always bear out. Like we sort of assume, okay, well, there's a lot of unknowns before the crops in the ground, et cetera. But what's really fascinating to me is, there are times where we think, farmers might feel better about something. It doesn't always play out that way. So it's fun to play the assumption game, but the data really doesn't always hold up. And that's good. I'm glad.
There are some things, though, where we do see a direct correlation. So, for example, when we ask about is now a good time to be making investments in the farm, capital investments for land, buildings, machinery, things like that. Every time we ask that question, it seems the results seem to be influenced by whatever the recent corresponding changes with interest rates. So going back to April of 24, we were at a 58. And then there was an interest rate announcement. Interest rates were cut. We go down now up to 63. Then we're to 69 for the next rate cut. We dropped back down in January of 25 on that one. And that was at the almost exact same time as the oath of office. That's and right, a lot of the announcements about potential tariffs. And now we're back up to a 60. So, that's a number that we have seen a direct correlation and I think probably causation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. One of the other aspects that we look at is one of the things that's, of course, perhaps more within farmers' purview than some of these other things like interest rates, et cetera, and that is marketing. So we do ask about confidence in marketing crops, and we do talk about livestock, but let's touch on crops first. How are farmers feeling about their confidence in marketing?
This one has bounced around a lot. And I think it's fair to also talk about the next question, which is their outlook on selling crops. So it's a very black and white question we ask, and we try to force people's thinking one way or the other. But we ask, should you be selling your crops now because prices are going to go down, or should you be holding your crops because prices are going up? And we have seen that one bounce around. And that is actually the only area that we have seen positive index numbers in the outlook on selling the crops. So the general feeling is prices are going to go up. But if you actually look at the bar chart, and for those that watch the video and see this chart, you will see that it is bouncing around a lot. Mm-hmm. And you have to wonder, does that not impact somebody's confidence on marketing? I mean, if I just cannot tell you one day or another what's going to happen, the marketing plan kind of gets, a little bit jumbled there. So confidence is low. Confidence is at a 77 right now. And it's been a while since we have seen that one in positive territory.
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of unknowns. And so I am curious, of course, our next intake, perhaps we'll see, some of the path forward for how things will go with tariffs, et cetera, perhaps with China, et cetera. I mean, maybe we'll have, and I think all of us are sort of waiting to see what that looks like before we sort of have a feeling on what things look like going forward. So fascinating. I'm looking forward to our next intake for sure. What about livestock though? Because this is, in the last little while, one of the few bright spots. How are farmers or ranchers feeling about livestock marketing?
So we asked a question halfway through, do you have livestock? And so people who answer yes to that are taken to another set of questions about their confidence in marketing livestock and also their outlook on livestock markets, which is phrased in terms of will there be positive margins or negative margins? And that one is the most positive of any of the questions we've ever asked. And it has been consistently for a while. And it almost seems like it is a bit opposite of the crop side of things, which stands to reason that would be the case. But we're looking at numbers up in like the 170s. So, wow. 160, 170. So that reflects extreme positivity for the livestock side.
And we do phrase it as the margin. because price and margin are two different things, but realistically, when prices are where they are on cattle, for some anyway, they are actually making a really decent margin for the first time maybe in, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years. It's about time. So there you go. Okay. We've got to leave it there for today, but I recommend everyone please head to our YouTube channel. You can watch the full breakdown between Justin and Sean on the latest CFSI numbers. And of course, head to realagristudies.com and you can actually sign up for our Insights panel and have your voice heard as well. So Justin, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you, Lyndsey.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Every successful harvest story begins with the right seed. And at Alliance Seed, we're committed to helping you achieve success every year. Our top-performing wheat, barley, oat, pea, and lentil varieties are tailored to meet the unique challenges of your farm, ensuring high yields, strong standability, and reliable disease resistance. Discover the Alliance difference at allianceseed.com or call 1-877-270-2890.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
I'm Lyndsey Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomists with me, Lyndsey Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 Sirius XM. Well, we got some good news. A lot of times we cover, what's the bad stuff that's happening, or what do you need to be concerned about. Some good news, as you know, there was a couple products related to controlling flea beetles, especially grasshoppers, that were taken off of the market. And good news, products like Silencer are back. Here to talk about it in a product spotlight is Cornie Thiessen. He's general manager for ADAMA Canada. Cornie, it's great to chat with you.
Great to be with you again, Sean.
Let's get right into it, Cornie. What does this reestablished feed uses from the PMRA mean for Canadian farmers? What's going on here?
Well, it's great news for Canadian farmers. Silencer is an effective and affordable tool to help protect their crops from pests. And this ruling really allows that tool to go back in the toolbox after being on the sidelines for the last couple of years. And it does so by providing clarity to the farmers on how they can market their crop should they choose to protect their crop with Silencer. So specifically, canola, cereal, soybean, pulses, corn, farmers can now, again, use Silencer, and the product can go into really all the traditional end uses that they previously went through. So a great step forward for farmers.
And how did ADAMA, from a company perspective, how did you contribute to this reinstatement of this really important active ingredient for farmers?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that we focused on. One was collaborating with the other registrants, with the industry and grower groups to really understand what the challenges were going to be, to get to a point of understanding what the concerns from the PMRA were, and then working jointly on a plan of attack to bring some new data to light to help address the concerns expressed by the PMRA. And so we were really appreciative of the collaboration that happened throughout the industry. And then obviously there was a financial support for the data generation that was needed and was ultimately successful in convincing the PMRA.
So was it new data, or was it like, hey, let's take a look at it's reorganizing data that was already there? Like what exactly happened here? What convinced PMRA to change their mind?
Yeah, this was new data that was generated, and it was, again, done in collaboration with the other registrants and with some grain companies that really stepped up and provided years' worth of samples that could then be tested. And that data ultimately was new data and a very robust data set that helped to address the underlying concerns. We're really appreciative of the PMRA taking the time to review the data and make a thoughtful decision based on that.
Yeah, and everybody's making decisions for their farm, and flea beetles are, well, they're a problem, and they're very much connected to this product reinstatement. And we've got all of this happening, like, you know, the reinstatement and seeding right in the now as spring is here. What advice do you have for farmers so that they can take advantage of this restriction being lifted?
Well, as always, we always try to encourage guys to talk to their local full-service retail because a silencer is a great tool. There may be other options there as well, but we really do feel that that farmers should be confident in the use of silencer this year. Should those bugs get to the point of needing some control in the field.
Now, is there adequate supply out in the marketplace?
Yes. So we've been working to reprint all the packaging material, and we've been collaborating with retailers and distributors to get all the product labeled, and that's proceeding really well. So growers should expect their retailers to have inventory of product that has the new updated label on it.
Yeah, you know what, Cornie, when I talk to a lot of our farming audience, loss of products, you know, where they were available and then now not available, it's a major concern. I don't want, you know, we're speculating here a little bit, so, you know, excuse me, but this is something that's definitely needs to be on farmers' radar in terms of having these products available long term, right?
Absolutely. We face with a couple of things that are taking the tools out of the toolbox, right? One is resistance, nature overcoming the effectiveness of these tools, and then the other one is regulatory decisions. And it's becoming a challenge to refill the toolbox with new tools as fast as tools are being taken out. And so it is something that we want to make sure that growers are engaged in it. We definitely always want to respond to good science. We definitely always want to figure out better ways to use the products that lessen the unintended impact of them. But it is really important that we continue to fight using good science and good advocacy to preserve all the important tools that we have.
Great stuff. Make sure everybody, as Cornie suggested, go to the ADAMA website or, of course, talk to your local retailer about the availability of silencer, and let's take care of those flea beetles once and for all. Hey, Cornie, thanks a lot for joining us here today on RealAg Radio. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate your time, Sean.
Great stuff. We're back with more of RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 Sirius XM right after this. Every farmer defines success differently, and every farm has its own unique challenges. Corteva Biologicals is partnering with Canadian farmers for their success, offering unique solutions that improve and protect crops from start to finish, based on each field's needs. Using proven predictable solutions across all crop stages, Corteva Biologicals helps build healthy, productive, and profitable farms. Corteva Biologicals, we're growing together.
It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
Welcome back to Real Ag Radio here on Rural Radio Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Tuesday, May 6th. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. And understanding the challenges you face, Nutrient Ag Solutions works with you to find the right solution every time. Nutrient Ag Solutions is one partner, all in. Visit nutrientagsolutions.ca to learn how their offerings work together to support your operation. we're going to have a very interesting discussion on a very serious topic, but one that does lend itself to some really fun sayings like squealing on pigs. Joining me now, Dr. Wayne Lees. He's the coordinator for Squeal on Pigs Manitoba. Welcome here, Wayne.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right. So let's back up just a step because we're going to talk about an event that happened last week. We're going to talk about the overall initiative. But first, I want to really tackle, the size and scope of the wild pig problem in Canada.
Sure. Well, wild pigs are what we define as any pig outside of a fence or outside of human control. So that includes escaped domestic pigs, things such as pot-bellied pigs that have escaped and are living on the landscape. But the most serious issue really is with what we call Eurasian wild boar. So these are the very hairy, very lean pigs with a very long snout. And the real damage that they cause is that they can survive in the wild. They have survived in our winters. And they really pose risks in three areas. The first area is that they're an environmental threat because they're an invasive species. And so they tend to really destroy environments, and they'll disrupt nesting birds. They'll eat small mammals and reptiles. They'll eat acorns that deprive other animals of those food sources. So they really do change the landscape. The real big reason that people are interested, though, from an agricultural point of view, is that these animals can carry lots and lots of diseases. So they're a potential vector for all kinds of foreign animal diseases, such as African swine fever, which is really the triggering event why a lot of activity has happened in the wild pig area right now. But we shouldn't forget that they can always also carry things like foot and mouth disease. Right. And these pigs can get in and bed down with beef cow herds and that sort of thing. So they would be a very big threat should any of those diseases be introduced into this country. And lastly, they're kind of nasty animals. And so there's a human safety aspect as well. So there have been some videos on YouTube and things like that where pigs have been chasing people. So there is a threat to human safety. Absolutely.
I've seen the tusks. Terrifying. And they're very smart animals. They're very cunning. They, we've covered on the show before about the importance of if you're going to try to trap or dispose of these animals in some way, you have to get all of them because it really is that important. You can't let any loose. But that is a huge challenge. So how long have we been dealing with this wild pig problem, and are we making any headway on it?
So a little bit of background. These animals were introduced as a farming venture back in the 1980s and 1990s. That was when agriculture was going through a very difficult time, and people thought diversification would be a good idea. I think it was originally thought that if these pigs escaped in under cold prairie winter conditions, they wouldn't survive, but that was an error. They have survived, and they have bred in the wild and multiplied. So the real programs to control them have been going on for a while, but they've really ramped up in the last 3 or 4 years. So I think in the early 2020s, that's really when these programs became very, very active. And so they're run by each province across the country.
Mm-hmm. Now, okay, so walk us through a bit of what something like your organization, Squeal on Pigs, is actively doing to try and identify or potentially eradicate this invasive species.
So Squeal on Pigs Manitoba is funded through the Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership. So we are a non-government agency. Other provinces run their programs through either the Department of Agriculture or the Department of Conservation. Our program, as most of the others also function this way, encourage people in the public to report sightings of wild pigs. And so once we get a report of a sighting, we'll send our field technicians out to investigate that. And so they'll talk to all the landowners in that area. They'll look for signs of wild pigs. They'll fly a drone to see if they can spot them. And then if that looks like it holds some promise, then we'll start setting up a baiting station with a trail camera and see if we can start to attract them to an area. And once they're coming, then we'll set up a trap and remove the whole bunch.
That sounds, though, not quite a needle in a haystack, but pretty darn close. Is this a challenge to actually find these wild hogs?
Finding wild pigs is really our biggest challenge. If you look at some of the reports coming out of the U.S., they don't have any trouble at all finding wild pigs, and they have, hundreds and thousands and millions of these animals. Our situation in Canada is very, very different. And so it's important not to make generalizations based on U.S. data. Finding wild pigs is our biggest challenge. And so we have to use a whole variety of techniques to do that. And really that was part of the focus of the second Wild Pig Summit that was held in Manitoba last week.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so, and maybe let's touch on that event. As you mentioned, it happened last week, bringing people together to talk about this issue, to look forward as to what you do next. What came out of that meeting as far as the major action items of what happens next on this issue?
Well, let me give you a little bit of background. This is the second summit. The first one was held last year about the same time. So we had 3 different sessions. The first session was really a presentation virtually on different types of surveillance methods. So we went over things, new developments like how do you place trail cameras, flying drones, looking for environmental DNA in stream water, all of those types of things to try to find these animals, because as I mentioned, that's the single hardest thing. Then we carried on into a more focused area of investigation after that, in terms of each province was to put together a small team and start looking at ways that they might respond to a foreign animal disease outbreak in wild pigs. So there was a scenario and various roles and responsibilities were gone through. This is important because this is an area that really tends to fall between the cracks. Traditionally, we think of CFIA as the lead agency for foreign animal disease, and they are, but wild pigs they're not really agriculture, they're not really wildlife. And so it's going to involve, I think, quite a bit of determining of the various roles and responsibilities. Who's going to do the surveillance? Who's going to do the trapping? Who's directing the whole program? And how does this fit in with CFIA's role in the commercial herd? So there's a lot of work ahead of us to tackle that.
Well, and as you mentioned, we may sort of first think of obviously threats to our commercial hog industry. But as you mentioned, there's potential implications for other livestock species as well. And we certainly know that, there are crop farmers that have reported significant damage from these in the environment as well. So it does cross many sectors as well. It's not just a pig problem. This is an agriculture problem.
Absolutely. And that's really why it's going to involve a team approach. We've heard about forming teams for various threats to our country and our sovereignty. And so we're going to have to form a team to create a solution to the wild pig problem. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a problem that we can tackle, and it's a problem that we can overcome.
Now, for those listening, as you mentioned, each province sort of deals with the wild pig problem somewhat differently, but there is some coordination, obviously. But for those who maybe have trail cams set up and or suspect that they may have wild pigs on their property, where do they go? How do they report those sightings?
So each province has a way to report wild pig sightings. And so in Manitoba, we use a 1833 number. So it's 1833 spot pig. Or you can go to our website, squealonpigsmb.org. So we'll take in sightings from pigs in Manitoba, and then we'll do that whole follow-up activity. Our website really, we publish maps of where the sightings have been reported. So it's actually a very good way of gathering information. But in other provinces, you need to contact your own provincial control program. Right. So each province will have a slightly different way of doing that. But if you go to Animal Health Canada, their website, they will publish a list of where all the contact numbers and websites are in each province.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so if you suspect such things, please do that, because this is a key part of this. Dr. Wayne Lees, thank you so much for joining me here on the show. A really serious issue. Glad to know that there's some coordination happening, and we'll be happy to follow along. And remember, everyone, to squeal on pigs. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and I'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
At Vaterstad, we aim to be the world's leading partner for outstanding emergence. We're doing that through innovative tillage, planting, and seeding equipment that's optimized for your field conditions and soil types. We also offer industry-leading capacities to help you get the job done in shorter windows of time. It's all designed to give your crop the best start possible so you can maximize yields. Vaterstad, we look forward to growing together.
How's your seed quality? What should you treat with? What about herbicide carryover and environmental concerns? Spring is here, and you've got a lot of things to think about in regards to your pulse crop. The Pulse School on Real Agriculture has information and advice for all these questions and more to help you navigate this season. Brought to you by BASF. Pulse School episodes are available at pulseschool.com, realagriculture.com, or as a podcast on your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio. I am your host for the day, Lyndsey Smith, and tracking livestock just got easier. The CLTS movement module records animals moving off premises. Although this is not a requirement yet under regulation, CCAA has streamlined reporting to prepare for future changes to support compliance. Learn more at support.canadaid.ca. I'm Lyndsey Smith with Real Agriculture, and joining me now is Ted Bilyea. He's with the Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute, of course known as CAPI. And Ted, you've got a research paper that talks about the potential of moving Canadian food into the Indo-Pacific region. But before we get to that discussion, I want to back up a little bit and ask sort of what spurred this discussion. Why this report?
Well, thank you, Lyndsey. I spent most of my career trying to sell, food and around the world, and always felt, that we we were in a situation where we had great surpluses and selling was difficult. Little by little, I've been come to the conclusion that we're probably moving from that world of abundance to a world of more, well, let's say less abundance rather than scarcity at this point. But so I wrote the report largely to convince myself whether that was true or not. And the upshot of it was, after absorbing just about as much data as I could find, is that, yeah, I think we are heading into a different world. Although it doesn't feel like it right now, when we have all these problems around us, worrying about our surpluses and where we're going to sell them, particularly with the tariff situation. It's a little hard to look ahead. The basic data shows us that, we are going to continue growing people for at least the next easy 25 to 30 years. Before we have this baby boom crash that's coming late in the century somewhere. And at the same time, despite all the downturns in economy we talk about in here, but we're not growing as fast on the GDP side globally as we were, but nevertheless, we're growing well above 2%, particularly in the developing world. And that's where the mathematics that I got into if you're making $1 a day and you get 50 cents, we both know what that 50 cents is going to be spent on, and it's going to go to food. And that's the history of this. So I wrote it to basically convince ourselves that we have an asset here in the food production. We don't quite know how to make it work for us yet, and so a lot of that is, if we believe that we may well be moving into a period of a food security crisis globally somewhere in the next 25 to 30 years, but probably sooner, are we doing everything we could do to prepare for that, and particularly to really turn that into a soft power asset, an economic driver, all of those kind of things.
So the title of the report is Food, the Undervalued Asset in Canada's Indo-Pacific Strategy. Why is it undervalued, do you think?
Well, I think it's undervalued largely because what I mentioned at the beginning is that every colleague I talk to has that same feeling that, boy, I've got to work really hard to sell today because it's there's so much food around. The data doesn't quite support what they're talking about. All the food gets sold, all the food gets eaten. It's just a question of who gets the better price for it. I gave a presentation yesterday to the Canadian Pork Forum. One of the things I showed them was a simple chart which said essentially, here's your net exporters. And that means, they export more than they import. Here's the net exporters of pork in the world. Even though every one of them in that room, from the farmers that feed the hogs to the, raising, distributing, the slaughterhouses, the processors, they all understood this, but it doesn't register until you really see it. But 95% of the pork in the world is produced by the EU, the US, Brazil, and Canada. That's it. Those four entities produce 95%. The other 5% doesn't matter. Those four see themselves as in competition with each other. And, when you think of it a different way, there's the number of net importers in the world is big. It's virtually everybody else.
Right.
And the EU itself would be a net importer if it actually was more logical about how it produced, because it produces a pig just to get a ham. And that means all kinds of surplus cuts that they have to subsidize. The world is kind of run by the importers in a sense. That's where the rules were based. They've got the strength when it's kind of doesn't make any sense. So that's the asset that sits there. But it's the same for all the major crops. Different actors maybe, but all the major crops are in that position where, less than 6 or 7 countries in the world will always be control more than 70% of the net exports, and in some cases, well over 80. farmers feel they're in competition with each other. You know, Canadian farmer feels he's in competition with Australian farmer, et cetera, which is nonsense. You need them both. And so I'm trying to kind of encourage a situation where we actually understand that we have an asset, and that and then the question is, how do we utilize it better for all Canadians, including the farming and food manufacturing community.
And we certainly in the past few years have heard a lot, and we're going to park the current tariff trade thing for just a moment. But of course, for the past several years, the Indo-Pacific region has been a focus of this government. We have a new office that was set up there with AFC and CFIA. Is the focus from your perspective, I would assume that you appreciate the focus on that region, but do we need to shift how we sort of think about that region, or what we plan to send, or how we're going to send it?
I think we're just beginning to really understand that region well. But the reality is that we are just scratching the surface of it, and I think that we need to very much discuss with people, particularly with our allies in the Indo-Pacific, where I think the discussion would work quite well. About their food security in the future. And one of the examples I mentioned briefly in the paper is Japan. I mean, they're not much more than about 35% self-sufficient in food. They got to work very hard at continuing to grow their own food, but also they very much need to worry about imports. And so a country like that, and particularly the companies in the country, they would love to have some kind of a buffer. So if things get tough, they know they can count on somebody. And so one of the thoughts I had in there, besides the fact that I think the net food exporters should work closer together in developing the rules, that in sort of an intermediate step would be offering them some sort of export insurance or assurance. And that would be in turn for them offering us certain minimum guarantees of offtake. And I think we're moving into that kind of a world. The WTO world we'll be lucky if it ever comes back. It's pretty much, we're still playing by the rules, but the reality is, if you got a problem, it doesn't get fixed that way anymore. Mm-hmm. And so we're now into the industrial policy and, that kind of a world. And, so I think there's some merit in discussing things like that with allies. I think everybody is going to be more interested in it, but I think we need to talk in terms of, we're doing this not just for economic benefit to ourselves, but we're doing this because this is a relationship, and we want to, it essentially gives us a certain amount of soft power. But I'm not sure we're approaching it the right way, we're kind of looking at it as purely an economic issue, and I think it's more than that. This
report, published in March, obviously stands on its own. However, all of this discussion is in the face of, the U.S. administration essentially detonating a gigantic bomb on world trade and trade flows. And I don't think I'm overstating that. How does the shifting trade arena, rules, relationships, how do we see the Indo-Pacific fitting in? I mean, can we look at it completely, isolated from all that? Or is it a part of it? Does our relationship with the U.S. help or hinder? How does this all fit together?
Well, I think, first off, it's going to continue to grow, and eventually we are going to see more competition for this food that's held in few hands. So whether the U.S. does what it's doing or doesn't do what it's doing, that isn't going to change that. Not very much. It may slow it down if we have a depression. I would think that the one thing we need to do is something that we've been doing, but do more of. And that is, first off, we need to really work hard at developing more of our own value-added products, particularly processed products.
Well, that does it for another edition of Real Ag Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you've got any feedback, give us a call, 1-855-776-6147. Or, of course, just follow us across social media. We are at Real Agriculture. All right, I will be back for tomorrow's show. Surprise! I'm doing tomorrow's show as well. Looking forward to it. All right, until then, cheers, everybody.